Welcome to episode number 52 of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast, my second short episode, talking about how to keep a routine while off routine. As we're in the midst of the holiday season, I thought it would be very important to talk about all of the ways that I implement aspects of my regular routine when I travel so that I don't veer too far off track, and the same ways that I help clients implement this as well. As always, if you like the podcast and you want to support it, all we ask is that you share this episode with a friend, family member, or coworker who would benefit from it. One share can go a really long way and supports our mission to help as many people as possible to live a healthier, sustainable lifestyle. Finally, we would love you even more than we already do if you took the time to leave us a rating and review on iTunes. Ratings and reviews are how this podcast moves up the ranks and becomes accessible to even more people. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you enjoy this episode, number 52, Creating Routine When Off Routine. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. So it's just me tonight, or today, whenever you're listening to this. It's nighttime or early evening for me now. But basically, we are in the midst of the holiday season. It's crazy. I'm traveling. Christina has family over, and our producer needs some episodes in advance. So we are going to be doing a couple of short episodes just to keep stocked up on content for you guys so that we're not missing any weeks of publishing the podcast. So today I wanted to kind of talk about how I keep on routine when I'm off routine, meaning when I'm traveling, I'm vacationing, I'm on weekend trips. You know me, I'm on road trips all the time with my fiance. So it's basically something that I have to work on constantly is making sure that I can keep some semblance of my routine as a part of when I travel so that I don't veer too far off track with my goals because my goals are really important to me. So I wanted to start this episode quickly just by saying a bit of perspective, of course, you know me. But I think that, sometimes it is good to be off routine entirely. I don't want this episode to come across as, oh, you must keep as much of your routine as possible all the time, otherwise you're a failure. Sometimes it's good to actually unplug 100% to get refreshed. It really is going to depend on your priority. So for me, most of the time, my priority is to stay on track no matter what obstacles I am going through at the time. And so that means implementing some of these tips and tricks. But, if I were to take a week-long vacation in the Bahamas, that might be a little bit different. I might want to sleep in more. I might want to be a little bit more relaxed with things. So I think, you can take elements of this, but if you aren't someone who actually needs a break and needs to get off routine for a bit, don't feel like you are going against, gospel here. This is just one person's perspective and advice about how to do this, especially when your fitness goals are a priority to you at any given point in time. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So when you're off routine, this is things like vacations, travel for work, weekend trips, and just crazy times in general. I mean, you might even be at home, basically having, what should be your routine, but maybe things are so crazy that you're off routine. So something like this might be someone's birthday week, whether it's the kids or your husband or your roommates, or maybe you are hosting people for the holidays, right? Maybe your mom, your sister, your in-laws, whatever, are coming over to your house for the holidays. Of course that's going to throw off your own routine, right? So there's definitely some wiggle room that you have to give there, I'm sure, but what are some things that you can do to keep in your own routine as well? So some strategies that I use to stay on routine are I do like to establish some non-negotiables in my day. And I talk about non-negotiables a lot because I think it's really integral to making sure that you can see long-term success is there are just certain things that have to be done for you to stay on track. And so I choose non-negotiables depending on the season, what that looks like, but it's always going to be making sure I eat enough protein. It's always going to be making sure I take my cold shower in the morning. If you guys haven't heard me talk about this yet, I talk about it a lot with my private client community, but personally, I take a freezing cold shower every single morning, and it only lasts maybe like 20-30 seconds, but it is basically for me to wake up and start my day with something that requires discipline. And this is something that I chose to do not because of any, magic, like sort of myths of like, oh, it'll do this for your physiology. Like, it's nothing really like that. Honestly, it's just something that's hard that I don't want to do every morning and forcing myself to do that. And I think that that starts my day off on a very good note, confirming to myself that I can follow through on my commitments. I can not skip a day. I can make sure that I am, putting my own priorities and my non-negotiables first. So it sets the tone for the day. I recommend it to anyone. It sucks. It does get a little bit easier, but it never, I mean, just feeling cold water on your chest first thing in the morning never gets easier, but making yourself do it gets a little bit easier. So I will say that. I would recommend it to anyone as much as it sounds like I'm a crazy person right now. And workouts, making sure that I train a certain number of times per week. I would say at minimum, in the craziest week possible, I will train 3 times, but typically I always make time for 4 or 5 sessions per week. And I mean, I'm a coach, I'm a bodybuilder, I live and breathe this lifestyle. So that for me is what is non-negotiable but for a lot of my clients, 2, 3 times per week is non-negotiable for them. And that's what they can make work. And that's amazing that they can do that. So it's really going to depend on your goals, your life priorities, and what your plan has set out for you. But you want to set those non-negotiables and figure out ways to get those done, even when you're on the go. And so for me, finding a gym is a very, very, very big top priority. Typically, if I'm traveling somewhere that I'm not super familiar with, I tend to lean on Planet Fitness, to be honest. And I used to be a huge, huge, huge hater of Fitness, guys, because I was a gym bro and I was like, ugh, like they have a lunk alarm, they don't have barbells, that place sucks. I would never go there. Turns out it's like my plan B every time I can't make it to a regular gym. And it's cheap. It's $10 a month and you can go to any location anywhere and just it's the same equipment, the same environment every single time. So, yes, it's all purple and yellow and they are they have their lunk alarm and they don't have barbells, but everything else, I mean, they have everything else that you could possibly need unless you're someone who needs to be throwing around 100-pound dumbbells, then I can't help you there. But basically, I lean on Planet Fitness a lot, especially when I'm traveling. I know a lot of people who like travel in vans and like live that lifestyle use Planet Fitness as well, especially for their showers, but also for as a gym. So I would recommend kind of having something like that in your back pocket, or if you can't do that for whatever reason, finding a gym nearby you and just kind of doing a quick Google or Maps search and buying a week pass. Typically, week passes are anywhere from 25 to $30 at most gyms, and I mean if you go 3 times, you've made your money's worth for that for sure. So I think that that is well worth it if you are going to be staying somewhere for an extended period of time. However, if you are traveling, say for a weekend, I think it's totally worth it to kind of squeeze your workouts in earlier in the week and then just take that weekend off. That way, you don't even have to worry about trying to stay on routine with that. I personally have been training in the morning, as you guys know, and I think that with the workouts, especially when you're off routine, you're with people, you're trying to spend time with loved ones, or you're vacationing or whatever, there's probably other stuff that you need to do during the day. So, what I recommend is trying to get yourself up and at it and get the workout done early in the morning. As much as that stinks for a lot of people, including myself, it does open up time and space and it doesn't cut into anything else that you might be doing. So I do recommend if you are going to make a workout a non-negotiable during your travel or during crazy times, to just knock it out in the morning because it's not worth, stressing out other people or having other people plan around you or schedule around you just because you want to get your workout in. Unless it's something that people want to join in on you with and becomes a family thing or thing with people that you are hanging out with. In terms of diet, so nutrition, this is usually where most people kind of to have more trouble figuring things out, I will say. Like for a lot of people, it's like, oh, I'll just take this week off, or I'll take this weekend off, or I'll plan my workouts in. That's no problem. A lot of times that's pretty easy for a lot of people, not everybody, but for the majority of people I talk to, it's the diet that really, really tends to get people hung up. So typically what I try to do is one, I bring my half-gallon jug everywhere that I go. If I'm flying, that is like the only potential exception just because it's kind of bulky to carry around. But outside of that, I will bring my big jug everywhere. And if I'm flying, then if it's not that, I'll bring the biggest water bottle that I possibly can through security. And we have a whole podcast episode that Christina and I both did about traveling and staying on track. So this is a little bit different. I don't want to talk about TSA in particular. I'll keep that part brief, but refer to that episode if you want to hear about that. But I try to stay hydrated. On top of anything else, hydration is so important to regulating your appetite, keeping regular digestion. I don't know about you, but anytime I travel, even if it's just for a weekend, and I've heard this from all of my clients as well, it's like digestion is just not the same when you're not in your home routine. So, to get it as close as possible to your home routine, hydration is key. And a lot of the habits that I'm going to talk about with this kind of staying on track when you're not on track is all centered around really keeping regular digestion, because you know how it feels to be like backed up and gross. Like it just is so discouraging to like you wanting to make better choices for the rest of your trip. I don't know about you, but that's how I feel, right, when I'm super backed up. So I think it's important that we really prioritize digestion so that we don't have to feel that way and we don't get into any sort of self-sabotage cycles. So hydration, I also bring my greens and my collagen almost everywhere with me, especially if I'm road tripping. I will bring those things. Now, I'm not saying that you have to, but if you have sample packets of, say, a greens powder, especially if you're going to be on the go, eating out a lot, having those probiotics and having those extra vitamins and minerals can actually help just with your mindset a lot too, of like, oh, this is the first thing I'm having today. This is starting my day on a good note. A lot of, how we behave throughout the day is influenced by how we feel, kind of starting off our day and what that tone set off feels like. So greens, collagen, I love to put it in my coffee, so I just kind of keep it a regular part of my routine. Funny enough, I'm super quirky, but I also bring my milk frother anywhere that I go that I know doesn't have one, because I love to mix in my greens, my collagen, those sorts of things with that instead of trying to like shake it up. So yeah, I'm bougie like that, but I will bring that in like the side pocket of my backpack. Not saying you guys have to, but bring the things that here's the takeaway, right? Bring the things that are going to perpetuate a normal morning routine for you if you can. Because again, a big part of how you behave throughout the day is going to be influenced by how you feel you started your day. So I would recommend that. And then I would also recommend just protein centered meals and trying to focus your nutrition less around let me hit my macros or let me make sure I can weigh my food. Because I think one of the biggest things that hangs people up a lot of times is like, oh, I'm off routine, I'm out of my comfort zone. Therefore, I cannot track a single thing because it's not going to be accurate. And here's the thing, guys. If you haven't already listened to episode 50, Is the Juice Worth the Squeeze? Then go listen to it if you think like that, because ultimately, nothing is 100% accurate that you log. And practicing, estimating, and being, as on track as possible when you're on the go is the only way that we're actually going to make this lifestyle stick. It's the only way, guys. And so if you don't get comfortable being away from the food scale, and to an extent being away from tracking your food in an app, and just making good choices when that stuff isn't there, then you're never going to be able to do this long term. So it takes that practice. I think it's really, really, really important that we practice that proactively. So focusing on centering meals around protein, trying to find fruits and vegetables on the menu and ordering those, and making sure to listen to our hunger and fullness signals and kind of trying to balance out our nutrition intuitively that way. It's hard, but if we don't practice, we don't get better. So this is something where I take travel and being off routine as an opportunity to practice these things and get better at them, because ultimately that will be my lifestyle long term and your lifestyle long term. If you are working at this and you want to make this a lasting change, you will eventually have to get there. I don't think anyone wants to be 80 years old with MyFitnessPal in their hand. So that would be my tips for dietary routines. And then in terms of like just when you go on these trips, what kind of frame of mind should you be in? I think an important thing to keep in mind is that, again, you might not be perfect. You might not hit your macros to a T. You might not hit your nutrition goals perfectly or your workouts perfectly, but it's important to keep theme-based reminders and goals rather than a concrete reminder like macros. So yeah, maybe you didn't hit 220 grams of carbs, maybe you hit 260, but did you hydrate yourself? Were you active overall on this excursion, this trip? Did you prioritize some form of movement, whether it's a workout, a step goal, stretching, whatever it is? And did you focus on protein, fruits, and vegetables? Like if you check off those 4 boxes, those 4 themes, quote unquote, you can walk away from pretty much anything feeling pretty good about yourself. And, those are the things that really keep your overall habits in line. So if you are freaking out about a vacation, travel, maybe holiday travel, seeing friends, seeing family, not being in your regular kitchen, not being in your regular routine, I encourage you to just look at those 4 things, or 3 things, I guess: hydration, movement, and protein, fruits, and vegetables. Like, if you can really just keep those top of mind when you're out of your routine, there's only so much damage that you can do. So, I wanted to kind of end on that, as well as end on the fact that, know that even if you're off track, maybe you don't do those things, maybe you don't keep that focus top of mind. And, maybe even if you are off track, I want you to know that any small action that you take that, you're trying and maybe you mess up still, maybe you still try to do a couple of these things and maybe you're unsuccessful in some, but successful in others. Those small actions are going to keep you from going farther backwards. And, any steps that you take back, weight fluctuations that you see on the scale when you get back from your trip, those things are going to be flushed out within a matter of days. These trips are not your entire life. And so when you go out of routine, I think it's really important to keep the perspective that like you always have your routine to come back to. That's so, so, so important because it's always going to be there. And so to freak out when we're out of routine is, almost negating and not acknowledging the fact that we have our routine to fall back on all the time. So, any damage, quote unquote damage that we might do, we can undo very quickly. And so keep that perspective. And, I thought about this too because I was talking with a client today who had just come back from like a week-long vacation, so much fun. And then, Thanksgiving's tomorrow, the day that I'm recording this, by the way. So, then he comes back, checks in, Thanksgiving's tomorrow. He felt like he, had no time to get back on a regular routine. And all of a sudden, there's a day where he knows he's going to be off track. And it was so frustrating to him. But at the same time, it's like, well, we have so many weeks ahead of us that will be on track. And, beyond the holidays, we have a whole 2022 to work with, right? And so remember that this journey is never ending. And remember that, even if you're off track for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, those small actions that you take that maybe you think are in vain or aren't working or aren't helping you, if they're helping you from not going as far backwards, it's helping. And you can always, always, always come back to your routine and reestablish it, reformulate it, and make sure that you have that routine to fall back on. And final piece of perspective that I want to end this on is something that I think I mentioned in episode 51, but this is going to release around the holiday season. Remember that if you're listening to this, you're staying engaged, you're working on your fitness goals, you are already the 1%. Most people let themselves take 10 steps backwards over the holidays. And even if you don't take any steps forward, or you only take 2 steps backwards, you are still well ahead of the game come January 1st. So just know that just by being engaged in this podcast, listening, working on these things actively, you are doing yourself a huge, huge, huge favor mentally and physically. And, when it comes to these little things like being off routine, there could definitely be worse problems at hand, right? So just know that you guys listening to this, you're a step ahead and you should be proud of that. So that's pretty much all I've got. I wanted to keep this pretty short, but I hope you guys like this little short episode number 2. Reach out and let me know any other questions or I guess topics that you would want me and Christina to cover in our future episodes. So you can, I'm going to see if I can close out this episode the same way Christina does because I'm so not used to it, but you can find me at Marissa Roy Fitness and Christina at Christy Lynn Fit. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode and got a lot of value from it, and we will see you guys in the next one next Tuesday. Thank you so much for listening to the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast, and we hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something from it. Please remember that Christina and I are not medical professionals, so if you're going to make any changes to your exercise or nutrition routines, please consult with your doctor or medical team first. Finally, we would love you even more than we already do if you took the time to leave us a rating and review on iTunes. Ratings and reviews are how this podcast moves up the ranks and becomes accessible to even more people. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next Tuesday here at the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast.